Hello, founders. Welcome to Startups.com. We are live. We're coming to you every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. We got a great show for you today. Every Tuesday, we do pitch decks. We go through pitch decks. We talk, does a unicorn? Is it going to get funded? And then Wednesdays, today, we do traction hacking, revenue acceleration. We ask a lot of questions. I have my partner in crime here, Chief Marketing Officer, and one of the founders here at Startups.com, Ryan Rattan. And I'll let him introduce himself in just a moment. And then Thursdays, we do an AMA. We just answer all your questions and we scour the internet. And that's the main thing that I want all of you to think about today as we look at our topic. We are going to be discussing revenue accelerator. So think of it like you're in an accelerator program with a funding accelerator, but we're going to go revenue accelerator. And we want to talk about your first 10K. You might be in that situation, what it means to make your next 10K or 10x your 10K. So for those of you who will be here with us live or you're watching this on the YouTubes, on the interwebs, maybe you're already generating 10K on a regular basis. How do you 10x that 10K and scale your business? We're going to be talking about that. One of the first questions I want to ask is, let's establish a bit of background. What is it like to go out and think about this in terms of the 10K chunks? Because I find founders kind of bite off way more than they can chew. Why are we approaching it this way in terms of 10K chunks? And how does that relate to your experience as a founder?
Look, I never figured out how to make 100K or a million K without making 10K first. Like, it's sort of on the way. Now, look, you could say like, well, we only sell deals that are $100,000. Okay, cool, fine, sure. However, right, every business I've ever built started with small chunks of revenue and built up from there. Getting to 10K is an important milestone. Will and I did an entire podcast on this recently around like kind of the why 10K.
Yeah.
So I won't go too deep into that. But at the 10K mark, you've proven some things in most cases. You've got some revenue. And if it's 10K MRR, let's say, then you've bought yourself some runway, some time, some freedom, some ability to buy some stuff you wouldn't otherwise want to buy. So it is super important. I think also when we break it down into that, and look, if you want to say, look, it needs to be 15K, it needs to be 5K, it needs to be 20, sure. I do like having a really specific milestone because it helps us to hit it. And we're like, well, how much do you want to make? More. Okay, well, how will we know we got there? We won't. Okay, great. Right. So we want to make it specific and measurable so that we can actually achieve it. And of course, there are some things that start to change along the way. And again, I think that 10K for most businesses, again, your mileage will vary depending on your ticket size and so forth. It's a good amount of revenue to have proven some things. So the way I think about these milestones in order, if we talk about first 10K, second 10K, or next 10K, and then 10X your 10K, that first 10K, we're really talking about like getting our first paying customers, right? Like how do we go from $0 to some dollars, right? Big undertaking and an important one. The next 10K is about building a repeatable system, right? 10Xing that is about scaling that system. It has to happen in that order. It will happen whether you deliberately do it or not, or you just won't get to 100K or 10K.
And founders often go right to, I want to scale. Like it's just something built in. They think every startup needs to start off at scalability. And then you have statements out there that go like, do things that don't scale. So let's not worry about all that scalability and making your millions upon millions of dollars. Let's start off with your first 10K. Psychologically speaking, you learn a lot when you start doing that. So I find chunking this down helps founders really take that first bite into the elephant that they're going to be spending the rest of their startup lives, trying to devour.
Yeah, you don't go straight to the Super Bowl. You got to win a bunch of games first, a bunch of smaller games, a couple games that probably feel really irrelevant. They all stack up into a winning season, which gets you into the Super Bowl, right? So look, I think that there's, you just want to dive right into the first 10K then?
First, I just want to say, and I want to welcome those of you who continue to join us. This show and everything we do is brought to you by us. We're our best sponsors. Ryan.
I know that guy.
Isn't this great right here? Yep, I've got some more for you here. But if you have not checked us out yet, go find us.
I am that guy.
Startups.com. That is the place for information, easy URL to remember. Ryan, what's your invitation? Why should people come to Startups.com?
Because doing all this stuff is really tough on your own. Right. And here you've got a bunch of people who've already made all the mistakes. I know that. I am that guy too. I am both of those haircuts at different times in the year. This is all really difficult stuff. Right. And there's a lot of information out there on how to do it. And I think having a team of people who can help contextualize this to your situation, help you understand exactly how to apply what makes sense for you and what doesn't, makes the difference between startup being work and a startup being agony. They're all work, right? But they don't all have to be agonizing. We don't have to be sitting alone questioning our entire existence at 4 o'clock in the morning by ourselves. right? You can have a group of friends to help you do that. And that's what we're here for.
Perfect. That's a great invitation. So let's repeat once again. This is what we're going to be getting into. Be revenue acceleration. First 10K, next 10K, 10X my 10K. We're going to break this down because we want all of our founders to consider this, because I know a lot of you come to Startups.com and you're seeking funding, but this is just a really great way to not only make your funding journey a little easier, but just help pad the success chances of your startup. Remember, everybody, use the Q&A box or the chat to ask questions. We're here to answer them. We'll prioritize your questions. If something comes up, if we get stuck on one topic, don't worry, Ryan and I, we're not going anywhere. We'll continue recording some other time. But Ryan, I want to set something up for you. Let's get this conversation rolling by looking at this. When we look at your first 10K, I really thought about it. And I thought, okay, there's ways to generate your first 10K even before you have a product, so pre-product. Naturally, everybody thinks 10K when you launch a product. But then we have a lot of founders, Ryan, that come and they're stuck post-product launch and they haven't made their first 10K. What are your thoughts on sort of the 3 phases? And just let's open it up so that our founders are open to the possibilities of generating revenue at all 3.
So I think the solution is going to be relatively the same regardless of where we are, right? I don't think it's going to change that much. Based on the framework that I've used, hope lots of other people use, you're going to take roughly the same approach regardless of where you are. You're far better to take it pre-product. You're better, if you haven't done it pre-product, to do it at product launch. And then if you still have to and you're post-launch and you still didn't get to where you want to, then you're going to have to do it then. But I don't know that the methodology is going to change. I'll tell you what changes a lot is the emotional state of the founder at each of those phases. So if you are still pre-product, let's go out and make some money. If you are launching, let's make sure you make your money there. And if you haven't done any of those 2 things and you're already post-launch and you still have gotten stuck with the product in the market, let's figure out how to go and sell that thing. But again, it's going to be roughly the same approach for me either way.
Talk to me about the psychology. I'm interested that you brought that up. Yeah. What is it about the psychology that, let's say, common, and we see this all the time, Ryan, where you think, okay, I can't make any money until I make the product, launch the product. It's great. Also, I can't make the product, launch the product if I don't raise money. And then you get into this doom spiral. Walk us through the scenario that you typically see, because I know the majority of founders are going to be thinking this way.
The average feeling at the pre-product stage is we have nothing to sell, right? Which we'll dispel in a minute here. That's absolutely not true. So the psychology, the emotional state at that point is we've just got to gut through this. Maybe we got to go raise money. We got to bootstrap, whatever it is we have to do. We got to build product so we can sell something, right? That's just not true. We'll touch on that in a second. The second state is around the launch. There's usually a lot of optimism around the launch. Of course, there's worry too, but this is where we think we're going to make the money. If you do it right, you will. If you don't, you won't. And then you end up in that stuck founder phase. The stuck founder is a really tough spot to be in because now we start to feel desperate. We start to question our decisions. We wonder, did we build the right thing for the right people at the right time with all the rest of the stuff, right? So at that point, you are now fighting a really uphill battle because your emotions are working against you. All right, your energy is working against you. And so the earlier we do this, the better. But we need to dispel that first myth, which is that before we have product, we have nothing to sell, or before we launch, we have nothing to sell. It's absolutely just not true. First principle here, key concept here, is that we want to sell before we build.
Yes,
right?
That's good.
I know you, right? Sell before we build. Now, there's a lot of ways of doing this. You're saying, but we're building a product, right? If you're building a service, okay, sure, you can do that. You can do it with anything, right? And sometimes, does it mean that you're selling exactly the thing that you want to sell long term? No. Is it still 10K that spends just as well as anywhere else? Yeah. And that's what we need, right? So sometimes, and I often advocate for, if I'm talking to a product company, when I say often, unless they're already doing it, I will always advocate, what's the service proxy look like? How do we just go in? Can we consult? Can we sell information? Can we sell time? Can we just go in and manually fix stuff that we eventually want to productize? The answer is almost always yes. Said differently, I've never seen a software that was anything other than just a replication of a process that people could do. Now, sometimes there's really gross inefficiencies or whatever, but we can get in there and we can solve those problems, right? So the challenge becomes that pre-launch stage, founders get stuck building instead of selling, which starts to, we talked about this over the last couple of weeks, Ed, when we were doing the founder-led sales piece. They get stuck in build mode and it's just never quite ready and it's never quite ready and it's never quite ready. And then even when it is ready, now let's thinking about it. That first 10K doesn't come from a perfect product. It comes from persistent pitching. And what we're trying to do is prove that people will pay. This is what I want to see happen.
Let me double click on this because it's no secret. If you've been around, I have a very embattled, complicated relationship with Reddit. Okay. So when you're on Reddit.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
I see these posts all the time. And it's like, we've been working on a product for the past 6 months or a year, and we're just about to launch. How do I get customers? And the snarky part, the part inside of me that Reddit has conditioned wants me just to say, you should have started 6 months ago. That's the best part. That's the easiest thing. But obviously, want to be gracious and help. That's what we're talking about here, everybody. We're saying that, yes, there are multiple phases, but if you're out there, let me just really be clear about this. If you're out there and you're building a product and it has not launched yet, start selling right now. And I'm going to pick Ryan's brain and all his intellectual capital that he's got up there to talk about that. And we're going to keep referencing that. And I thought it was really important to emphasize. But let's jump in. So your first 10K, so we're talking different scenarios. So Ryan is going to bounce back and forth between pre-product, product launch, stock post-product. These are all scenarios and we acknowledge every one. But first, Ryan, something that you always talk about, no matter what stage you are, is solve an urgent, real problem. Break this down for us.
Yeah. Look, what are people already spending money to fix? All right. What are their hair on fire problems? Even if they're, let's say, maybe a little bit tangential to what you're doing, right? Like long term, we want to build a product that does this. Okay. Is there a smaller piece of that product that we could consult, sell an information product around, build an AI chatbot to deal with, whatever, right? Get creative here, but solve an urgent and real problem. Hopefully that's what your startup's doing anyways. And hopefully, and it's back on my desk, so I'll hold it up now. My favorite book in the whole world, The Mom Test, right? It just wouldn't be, I swear people are going to start to think that Rob pays me for this. He doesn't. He should. He doesn't. We should already know what those urgent problems are. But sometimes the urgent problem that we identify is too big for us to tackle at the beginning, right? Like we need to go build big software. We need a big team. We need more research. We need whatever. Break that thing down. Very few big problems aren't a composition or a composite of smaller problems. So break it down and figure out, what can we jump in and do here? And again, like what are people already spending their money to fix, right? Who else are they paying to do this? How can we step in front of some of that revenue that's already being spent by the same population that we want to serve, right?
Let me clarify what you're saying here for everybody. Make it so granular. If you have not validated your problem, that it is urgent and it is real, then you're going to have an uphill battle. And that's where probably go back to the drawing board. But what you're saying, Ryan, is that there has to be, even if you're like saying, we're just going to create the best ERP or HR, IS SaaS platform in the world, et cetera, there has to be ways where you can break down what within that are the urgent problems that they are spending money for. That's what you're talking about. What are some examples that you can think of?
Well, so let's use your example. Let's say we want to build the world's greatest HR platform. Well, an HR platform solves dozens, if not hundreds of problems. What are the most urgent ones? And the ones that we can solve without massive amounts of technology, by maybe having to throw extra human time at it, something. Even better, if you can perform the further calculation here and say that also tease people up to want to use our future solution, right? Doesn't always necessarily work that way, but let's just say we want to build this amazing HR platform. Where does HR start? Well, with candidate identification and hiring process and onboarding. And let's just say that we don't care about like all of we're true HR. We're like the internal human resource thing. That's what we're building once you're here. So we're going to say like onboarding is where all this starts. We're going to go in and do onboarding consultation, right? So we're going to sell onboarding consultation to our first couple of clients, and people will absolutely lose their minds at this. You go, Brian, we're building software. We are not consultants. We are not going to do this. Cool. You want to be that stuck founder in scenario 3 that didn't sell anything to begin with and then launched their product without good product market fit and doesn't really understand, doesn't have a relationship with any clients. Imagine the difference, Ed, and I know that you've done this process, so you know exactly what this looks like. When we go in and we provide real value to people, and we get them to pay us for something, how much easier is it to get them to pay us for something else?
Oh, yeah. Like, I'm going to say shooting fish in the barrel because you shot one and then you know where the next one is. Right there.
You're already in the barrel, right? You're in the barrel with them at that point. So it becomes significantly easier. Also helps to improve your product, right? It's one of the reasons I love a service proxy where we start to provide value for people because it helps us to build a better product, right? We can dedicate a proven proprietary process, which is great product.
Let me give some pro tips, and from my personal experience out there, my second startup that I was able to exit, and very thankful that I did so, was an HR, employee engagement, measure culture, all these things. I was saying we can measure culture, we can work with culture before culture was even popular. And so it was a real heavy lift to try and figure out what are the pain points.
Yep.
And what I ended up doing was I said, okay, what are the major, what's like the one thing with HR that's really killing you right now? And it was such an abstract thing. He said, our most popular workshop that we sell has to do with workplace respect. All right. So I'm like, okay, I can retrofit that. Then after that, just to your point, they came back to me and they said, we just poached someone from Pfizer. All right. This was as they were making those little blue pills. All right. And they said, we don't know after 3 months if he's going to be a candidate long-term for us. We have a massive balloon payment to the contractor through the recruiter, and then we have massive balloon payment to the actual employee. We need to know. And so I said, I can solve that too. How much, right? And they were telling me 3,000, 6,000. And bang, I made my first 10K very quickly, even before I built the product. And wow, was that ever liberating.
Yeah, and it's actually a much better way of doing it, right? It's not like this isn't, I don't want people to look at this and go, okay, this is a concession prize. If I can't just get my product out the door and sell my actual product, I guess I'll go do what Ryan and Ed are saying and sell 10K of something else. This is the path. This is the way you want to do this. You build better product, right? I built software a long time ago for back office and front office management in medical practices. How did I do that? I started by consulting those practices. I started by helping them fix processes first, and then we built software to replace process. All right, so I got paid a lot of money first to consult on the process, which taught me how to build a product, which I then turned around and sold back to the same people. Right, this works.
It's beautiful. Okay, I'm going to add the next point, and let's talk about the other phases. So first, solve an urgent problem, urgent, real problem. Get it validated, everyone. Do yourself a favor, talk to customers. That's going to do you so much good.
Yeah.
And then next, you say leverage your network. How does that all play together?
Yeah, well, because we gotta have somebody to go solve for, right? So we gotta if we don't already know who to go talk to, right? We may solve an urgent problem and we want to do that. Yes. Maybe we've talked to some people through customer interviews. Hopefully you have. If you haven't, please do so. A lot of times those end up being the people. So when I say in your network, all right, if you've reached out and done customer interviews with 100 people, you've got 100 people who are now highly likely potential clients that you already know something about.
They are in the barrel.
They're in the barrel. They're part of the barrel, right? Your first 10 to 20 customers are already in your circle. You just don't know it, or you just haven't pitched them yet. Right? I guarantee it. Right? Unless you have literally been hiding under a rock and you're not selling bomb shelters, because then that would still qualify, then you already have these folks. You just need to go through again, get really specific about who your customer profile is. And one of two things is going to happen. You're going to find them within your network, or your network is going to find them within their network. You're going to be 1 to 2 degrees separated from your first 10 to 20 customers. You just got to go and do the pitching. We
have videos, everyone, on the ICP, the ideal customer profile. But Ryan, I'm going to give you a real example. And we're talking to founders every day. You do a workshop every Monday and Friday, getting customers. So you're talking to founders all the time. It was an interesting case. There's a founder, and I'm going to spare the gory details. Names have been changed, to protect the innocent type thing. But this founder is such a great founder, Ryan, like just a great presentation, talks about it, crisp, unique value proposition, elevator pitch. All right. Totally great. Yeah. And has got experience, domain expertise, but is spending all their time.
I knew the other shoe was going to drop. What? But what? Go on.
This founder is spending all their time, Ryan, cold contacting potential customers. And I asked him, how are your warm network, your contacts, doing for you? And he's like, they're not really helping me out. They're not referring. And I said, I think there's an issue here in what's going on. What would you say to that founder? Because it's either fear, it's either you're doing it wrong, or you've burned all your bridges. What could be possibly happening with that scenario?
Short of some of those, which I think are at the hyperbolous ends of the spectrum, right? Let's aim at the middle of the bell curve here. They're probably not providing a clear understanding. So one of the things, we did some research, this has been 8-10 years ago now, around what makes for a good referral program. All right. So if we want our network to turn us on to people, how do we do that? Right. So we're talking personal network. It's slightly different than what like a referral program would look like. But we found two things drastically improved referrals. And so if we want to drastically improve our results with our network, and I assume we're talking the case where, because I think the way the scenario you pitched was like, yeah, they're not helping me. They're not turning me on to new people. Right. So
Exactly.
We're talking about getting a referral in. Okay.
Yeah.
So two things. Make a specific ask from them around the number of people. Here was the funny part within the research. It actually didn't matter how many you asked them for, and it didn't dictate how many you would get. So I could ask for 1, or I could ask for 3. I wouldn't necessarily get 1 or 3, but I got a 40% higher likelihood of getting any referrals from that person the minute I asked them for a specific number. Why? Because it plants a seed in your head. Now You say, hey, Ryan, who's the one person you know that should be working with me right now? And I go, who is that one person? If you say, who are the 3 people? Okay, I got it. Who are the 3 people I know that should be? If you just say, who should I be working with? It's too vague.
Exactly.
We're putting way too much homework on their plate. The second one, which augmented by an additional 20% lift in the likelihood of receiving a referral, was doing some of the homework for them. Not saying, who do you know that I should work with? Who do you know with these characteristics?
Nice. Yeah,
right?
Perfect.
That has this and this or does this, right? That maybe they run a business that's service-based and they're somewhere probably between $100,000 and $500,000 a year. All of a sudden, my ability to perform the mental work of surfacing those people, you've now given me context clues, which makes it easy. When we make things easy for people, they're more likely to do them. So this founder is probably not making it easy enough on their network. They may not be even specifically asking. They might be being super vague, which is like, they're just like, hey, this is what I'm doing now. Assuming that everybody's going to be like, let me go find you some people. Nobody's doing this, right? Ask. Be specific in what you want from them. Push them a little bit. For the ones that you know really well who haven't referred you anyone, tell them that you're having this problem beyond just them. Don't make it about this person.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Don't make it about this person, but go back and ask them why. You're like, I'm asking everybody in my network for these referrals. Nobody is giving them to me. I am stuck. I can't get to my first 10K in revenue. Nobody's turning me on to their contacts. I can't get outside my own first degree. And my contacts aren't my ICP. What's going on here? And get some feedback. Find out, but don't make it about them. Be like, why didn't you refer me to somebody? Right? Because I don't like the look of your face. Right? Who knows? We don't want to put people on the spot. But the minute we start to ask, it's like, hey, this is a problem across the board. Like, what am I doing wrong here? You'll be amazed at what feedback you get.
You know what? You bring up two really great points I want to highlight. One is you may be 1 degree away from your customers, meaning that you've already spoken to them. All you have to do is talk to them. Or you might be 2 degrees away, that if you prime the pump, you make it easy, they could be referring you next. But as you held up the mom test, part of that is getting bad news and learning how to process it. Yeah. And they may just tell you, you know what? My friends don't do business with Koreans. That is very distinct. No, I'm just kidding. It never happens. Never happens, everyone. I just like to pretend that it happens. It doesn't happen. But they may give you some bad news saying, you know what? I didn't want to bring this up, or now that you bring it up, I'm glad that you asked. This is a little awkward, but I give you some feedback about your product. Yep. Doesn't do what you said it's going to do. There may be so many things. And then that's data, and that's going to help you.
Yeah. Yes, that happens, right? There's some hard news that has to get delivered. Sometimes it's just an insight you couldn't see. For example, it's happened to me before where people have come to me with a product or a thing that they want me to shout to my network, and I couldn't do it right then because I knew there were bigger and more pressing problems, right? We got to remember that, like, we're talking about people burning their social capital, their credibility, their whatever to introduce us. And like, use me as an example. I get pitched stuff all the time, supposed to be good for startup founders. What do I consider my fiduciary responsibility, my responsibility to all of the founders that we work with? That I'm not going to direct them into something unless it is the best use of their time and money in that moment. And sometimes it's just not that moment, right? If you've got a really cool cap table management software and you want me to share it to my network, and I know that all of my network is currently beating their heads against the wall because nobody's writing checks and there's no funds coming out.
There's no cap table.
I don't want to give them a cap table software thing. Be like, thanks, Ryan. I can calculate the no one in my cap table. Cool, right? We got to understand, a lot of times there are very nuanced reasons why they're not doing it. And sometimes we can come back and go, gosh, I hadn't thought about that. But you know what else I happen to have? In addition to the cap table, we actually retool this thing and there's a deal room piece, or we've got a bunch of advice on where to go and how to raise, right? So sometimes then you find a way to get to that audience after the fact.
And that's what might be preventing you from getting that first sale, or you're stuck even after you've launched it. Yep. You're having the wrong conversations. This is a segue to your next point, Ryan. You say have conversations, not campaigns.
Yes. Look, and this is from a marketing guy, right? So take this for what it's worth. You want to talk to your customers directly. I want you to forget about landing pages. I want you to forget about ad spend, book calls, pitch. That's it. We don't need to do anything more complicated. And you don't even have to start it as a sales pitch. It can start with something as simple as, hey, Ed, I'm working on an AI tool to help people who are building HR softwares to solve the problem of structuring what is otherwise really unstructured data. Is this a problem for you? I'd love to pick your brain. Spend 10 or 15 minutes to understand, make sure I'm building the right thing.
Yes.
Cool.
It's an invitation.
Easy conversation to have.
Yes. And let me support that by saying, Ryan, I've found that if I've articulated the problem properly and it's a painful problem, my potential customers will jump at the chance to discuss it. They'll vent. Yeah. They'll say, oh, yeah, I can't wait. And they'll thank me for even attempting to talk about the problem in a way that's constructive, that they can get involved.
Yeah. This is a fun pro tip. Now, this is going to apply for everything, but sometimes when we're dealing with like multiple stakeholders and there's a blocker and we're aware of that, there's a really powerful thing you can do here to get people to want to lean in exactly to the point you were making, which is like they vent. So you might reach out and be like, hey, Ed, as the chief product officer at this HR company, I know that you're constantly struggling to be able to get all the budget you need from your CEO. All right. So all of a sudden you identify the other blocker in the conversation, something you know you're gonna have to address at some point anyways. And you open the door for them to say, like, I know that they're the problem stopping you from getting all the solutions that you need. I've made more friends this way, right? By joining together against a common enemy, which is usually one of their co-founders or boss or right, some other stakeholder in the company. And so, yeah, so it's a really interesting way to enter into those conversations.
Or a competition. You can invoke that competition. That's another good way.
Yeah.
Another great pro tip that I do, if I've done my customer validation properly, I will contact them and say, you know what, I've been having conversations. I've talked to literally 50 of your colleagues, and 40 out of 49 of them have said this is an issue. And I'd want you to know that I know this, or, hey, what do you think? How would you like to chime in on this conversation? I get a hook, line, and sinker that way.
Yeah, they want to be able to add their 2 cents. Yeah, absolutely.
Anything to start a conversation, and this is where I do use Reddit quite well. I will ask really dumb conversations to make people get very testy, and they will just blast away. And through all that, I'll sift through that, and I'll get so much gold by starting a conversation instead of pitch slapping them or leading them with my pitch. I'll just say, let's just talk about this topic.
Yep, that's exactly it. And you can do that in a lot of places. It doesn't have to be somewhere that's quite as ascorbic as Reddit, right? Like it works there, but you can ask those kind of questions anywhere, right? And sometimes a public forum is a good place to do it. Sometimes DMs are a good place to do it. But asking people a question that they can easily answer that also makes them feel smart, great way to make friends.
I do confess, I had one of my buddies say, Ed, you just realized that you're throwing gasoline onto a manure fire with your question. And he knew what I was doing. We kind of laughed about it, but it's great. Have conversations. All of them are beneficial. Don't do campaigns. Something inside a founder says, I got to get to scale, so I'm going to run a Facebook campaign and throw $5,000 into paid ads. Start with a conversation, and then your last point, Ryan, that you put, sell before you scale. These all click into each other. What does this mean?
So this is kind of like all the rest of this stuff coming together, right? Which is to say, like, we don't need to be running campaigns. We do need to be having conversations. The reality is that you want to close the deal manually with as much touch as possible, right? This is super counterintuitive. I want to have as much effort, as much me involved in these initial sales as possible so that I see all the places where it can go right and where it can go wrong. I can account for that later. I want you to close deals manually. I want you to do this yourself before you even think about building funnels and automation and all this stuff. If you can't get 10 sales personally, you are really, really unlikely to get 100 of them through marketing and automation and scale. All right, that's just the reality of it. It hasn't happened, of course. All right, can we all think of that one with that one person? Yeah, that's great. Are you that one person? No? Then shut up and go sell somebody something.
Yeah, it's always the best feedback that you're going to get, Ryan, is when you are face to face with someone and you give them the price and you ask for the sale. That feedback, that data that you get is worth gold.
Yeah, and it's not about the yes or the no. It's about all the nuance, right? It's the same thing it's my shtick around like customer interviews versus surveys, all right? Because if I ask somebody, is this a problem for you in a survey? And the answer is yes or no. The answer is yes or no. If I ask, Ed, is this a problem for you? And you go, yeah, right? On a survey, that still gets coded as yes. But that's way more like the emotion in that. The response tells me something about how much of a problem this is for you. We lose out on all that texture when we start to move fast. And that texture is super, super important to get in these conversations right.
Let's summarize, Ryan. We had some really good points here. And we know we're in scenarios where people are either pre-product, right at launch, or they're feeling kind of stuck. We got a founder out there knowing that they're potentially in those three scenarios. What would you tell them in terms of an action? Like literally stop listening to this after we're done and take action in this way. How would you summarize all these points?
Assuming that you already know that you're solving an urgent and real problem, go leverage the network. We talked about a couple episodes ago in the founder-led sales. Create a spreadsheet of those 200 people in your network and then start contacting them, right? Just start doing the outreach. Even if all you get is no's, you're not just getting no's. You're getting a ton of knowledge around why you're getting the no's, why this isn't the right person to talk to, why they can't say yes right now, why they will never say yes to this product, right? If you, and speed is your friend here, right? Same thing I said a few weeks ago, which is like that first outreach needs to happen in the next days, not in the next weeks, not in the next months, all right? This needs to happen fast. Speed is your best friend here, because this is where the learning starts to happen. You'll accelerate it. I can guarantee you will not make your first 10K until you start doing some calls, right? It's not just gonna land on you. You gotta do something. Again, like if you can't sell this in a one-on-one conversation, no amount of marketing is gonna fix that.
That's what you mean. If you can't sell, having conversations, not campaigns, scaling through campaigns is completely futile. It's a moot point. Let me stop for a second and talk from an investor's perspective, because I know a lot of founders are trying to raise capital. You go to an investor and you tell them, listen, I've got X amount of traction. We made our first 10K. Yay. And the investor will say, okay, great. What was your go-to-market strategy? We bought a whole bunch of ads. We spent $11,000 on ads and we made our first 10K. But we know we can make 10K and now we want more money from you. Okay, that's one conversation. Kudos for getting 10K. But then if you're out there and you said, all right, we actually went out, we just did founder-led sales and I called every single person. I heard this guy on Startups.com and he said, make a list of 200 people, write down why I'm not talking to them. And then it pushed me to get on the phone and learn. I got all these rejections. And just by sheer force of will, it took us forever, but I got our first 10K sales and I sat right in front of them. They wrote me the check. And now we're ready to go. You have to understand from an investor's perspective, who's going to get that investment between the two? And that's what we're advocating for if you are fundraising. Ryan, what are your thoughts on that?
No, it's absolutely true. I mean, it points out so many things about that particular founder, right? Because there are a lot of ways to solve a problem. Finding a founder who solves a problem in the right way for the right time. All right, now, if we're raising Series A and that founder's telling me, I'm still beating up my personal network, I've yet to talk to a stranger yet, I'd be going, okay, this is not how we solve the problem at this level, right? You should have already found some product market fit and product marketing fit. You should have already found at least a single channel where you can drive leads from. You should already know what your sales process is and be ready to start to duplicate that beyond founder-led sales. That's a problem. So I think it all does come down to kind of stage where you're at and being able to tell the best version of a story, right? Like you want to look like you did the best you could in that moment. And in a moment like that, we're trying to get to that first 10K, burning 50K to get to 10K or 11K. You were being very generous, Ed, to get to 10K through early marketing. The other thing that I think people just don't realize is that, again, efficiency and effectiveness have to be considered here. It's way more efficient to reach out to lots of people, but until we know we have something that's effective, we're just scaling an inefficiency. It's exactly the opposite of what we're trying to do. And so by spending that 11,000, we're also giving ourselves a false sense of what our customer acquisition cost is going to look like because we're doing it at a time where we have the least information, the least resources, the least knowledge around what channels work, the least understanding of who's going to convert and who's not, how to qualify people, all of that stuff. And we will learn it if we're lucky and we have enough money to burn over time, or we can just do what you and I are suggesting, get in there, sell, and learn that stuff at light speed and have a higher likelihood of hitting that 10K on a positive ROI.
And investors really get nervous when they start seeing that customer acquisition costs go up because they're thinking to themselves, well, where's my money going to go? Let me tell you the opposite. Let me give everyone an example. I was listening to a general partner and he's made some really good bets. He's a real solid guy. Changed my mind on a lot of investment theses that I'd been thinking about. And he went and invested in a creator. And he said, the reason I invested in this creator is because they have a customer acquisition cost of zero because they've already spent all the time building up their audience and they know what their audience wants. And instead of investing in a specific product, he invested in the founder who was a creator and said, I just want to participate in everything. And that was his kind of next thing that he said, I'm going to go further down right to the founder level. But it gives you a really great indication of how investors think and how nervous they are because today, Ryan, I know you see this, developing product is getting easier and easier.
Yep.
Distribution, the fragmentation in the markets, man, that is hard. We deal with this every day, Ryan.
Yep, harder and harder. And it will only continue to get harder. As product development becomes easier, it means that there's going to be more noise in every single market. We're not even really seeing the full effect of that yet. Distribution will become harder and harder and harder, right? And I think there's a couple interesting things we can talk about at some point, Ed, around that, but that will take us off on a tangent that might never end.
I love those tangents, Ryan. But yeah, let's keep it on track. Everyone in the audience, make sure you use the Q&A to chat or ask questions. Let us know if anything's relevant. What are you trying to sell? And if you're watching this on the YouTubes, feel free to hit that comment. We're more than happy to compile all those questions and then keep answering them. Let's move on to the next one, Ryan. Your first 10K, this is what we talked about here. Let's keep going. Your next 10K, right? Yep. And this is what you say. In general, this is the overarching principle. Once you got your first 10K, find what works and repeat it.
That's it. This is now how do we go from a few sales that we cobbled together from a personal network to a predictable system, right? What did we learn in selling that first 10K? And presumably we learned a lot. It isn't about more ideas. It's about doubling down on what's working. We should have been able to, at this point, identify some patterns. Who's buying? What messaging works? What people are more likely to say yes? Why do they say yes? Why do they say no? All of these things add up to helping us to build a track to that next 10K. Some of this we did cover a bit in the founder-led sales piece, which is like, we got to be documenting, right? We got to document what's already working. We don't want to leave this up to chance, so we do need to be fairly diligent. But this is why, like, founder-led sales and just directly picking up the phone and talking to people It's a lot easier to document what's working when we see all of it. Right?
Sure.
The minute this goes off to an automated funnel and we're looking at predictive analytics and behavioral stuff and conversion rates, we're missing a lot of the story. Like, we get the chapter headings, but we have no idea what the hero did throughout. We need all of it. Review those first 10 sales. Where did they come from? What problem did those people care about most? Out of all the things that we were pitching and talking about, what did they care about most? What objections did they have before they bought? And then we turn that stuff into assets that we use to keep selling, but we keep selling more efficiently now. Right now, we start to be able to duplicate some efforts. Okay, yeah, those first 10. So it turns out they were all from these two industry verticals. Nobody in medical cared. Nobody in fintech cared. It was all like biomed and research people. Cool. Well, now we know for now we can shunt aside those other, and we're gonna stick right here in biomed and research. And then we get into the specifics about what problem they cared, right? And now we can start to make sure that moves to the front of our pitch, right? It's like, okay, we were talking about these 3 problems. Turns out they really only care about this one. Or maybe they care about these 2 in conjunction, right? But we got to learn this stuff. And the only way we learn this is by being out there and selling it, right?
And let's jump into the good stuff. And let me incentivize all you founders out there. If you can predictably make your next 10K and tell the investors how you did it, that's what they want to invest in. Yep. Not you spending your time figuring out how to just figure it out in the first place. They just want to pour gasoline on the fire. So figure this out. And these are the points that Ryan was talking to. Let's break it down. You gave a great preview. So document what's already working. How does that look?
So like I said, we're going to review those sales. We got to go back through and do postmortems on each of those. Hopefully you were taking notes through those sales calls. Hopefully if you were on Zoom, you were recording these things and have transcripts and maybe some AI insight around this stuff. If you just have the recordings, you can solve for both of those things. If you're not recording, if you're doing face-to-face sales, something like that, make sure you're taking really diligent notes during, and make sure you review those notes and augment them immediately after. And then once you've got to 10 sales, let's just say you're really good. Let's just say you're closing 1 out of 3 of these early folks. You've had 30 conversations at this point, right? So now we've got some contrast there. Now we can say, how do I thumbprint the folks that were like the 10 that we sold, and how do we avoid more of the 20 who didn't? Or what can we do to change the cadence, change the pitch, change the problem that we're pitching so that more of those 20 would be like, right? Because we can create efficiency either way. Right, we can either go find more of the people that look a lot like the people that already bought, or we can find ways to sell into the population.
I think it's a combination of doing both. You double down on what's worked, and then you try to optimize. One of the techniques in another conversation I literally had this morning, I asked the founder, what is your best sales? Like, how does that work? Let's make common sense come practice. Let's double down, because I know you're making money, and I know you've achieved a certain level of momentum in your business. And he looked at me and he said, okay, gee, that's really interesting. I think it's word of mouth. And I go, okay, let's just explore that just for a moment. How did they give that word of mouth? What did they say? What situation were they in? And he was like, gee, I don't really know. And I said, you know what? First thing you need to do, and this is okay. If you're in this spot, it's all right. Yeah. Sometimes you just stumble into sales, which is great. Like, the fish just jump into the boat because you're just in that type of fishing, environment. It's okay to go back and ask them. And that's what I told this founder to do, Ryan. I said, go back and ask and repeat the story and document it.
Yeah, we want to know these things. Like, what was happening right before this person decided that we were necessary in their lives? And then how can we go find more people who are in that similar circumstance? So this is where the documentation is super important. To your point, it isn't just about cataloging the high level. Like, we got to understand the why. The nuance here matters so much, because then we either have to go look for situations where that nuance is likely to occur, or we can create the nuance, right? We can be the one asking the question. We can be the one showing the thing. Something sparked interest from that one person to the other. Either something in me said, I see something in you that says you need to go use Ed's HR solution, or someone came to me and said, we're struggling with this, what should we use? And I went, Ed's HR solution. Either way, word of mouth got you there, whether it was me realizing and seeing a problem in somebody else and wanting to help them with that, or them seeing me not suffering from the problem they had and asking me about it. What can we do to create more of those conditions? So again, it's just about double clicking and doubling down on what works, and then trying to make that repeatable. Some things aren't repeatable, right?
Sure.
So you may also find it's like, look, the word of mouth is actually totally random at this point, right? There's nothing I'm doing. On rare occasions, someone asks me this and you are always the answer. Okay, cool. We may not be able to duplicate that, but we can at least find out what that conversation looks like. What's that question they're coming? What's the precipitating factor that leads the person to seek them out in the first place?
Let me give a real example. One startup that I know, and I really appreciate this startup because they would win all these awards for having the most psychological safety as far as their culture is concerned. Kind of a little off the beaten path, but gives you an idea of the quality of type of founder. And I was sitting with him. He told me, Ed, we have completely cut out all paid advertising and salespeople. And they were in the Inc. 500 top fastest growing, companies for several years in a row. And I said, so what did you end up doing? He said, Ed, I realized that all my best customers that I wanted were coming from word of mouth referrals, but it was a particular type of referral. It was a type of person who had a business suited and wanted to refer to me because it made them look good. And so here's what I did. I formalized the program and I have beers with them. Like I have a beer with them every week to talk about how we can optimize it. And then they get to request me what collateral, what do they need, and how do they deal with that? And that's all I do. And our entire business is built on that. And they grew so fast, they had all their HR problems. And so that was one thing of they not only took, a page out of your book when you explained, Ryan, before, sometimes you're getting the wrong yeses, like the wrong customers. They optimized, doubled down on what worked, continued to squeeze it, and it just kept going and going and going. And that's what you're talking about, Ryan. You're illustrating, go find out, document the process, and then continue doing it. We have a little bit more time. Let's add to this. Turn early wins into a flywheel. What does that look like?
Ask every single paying customer for referrals. Right.
Beautiful.
But use the tactic I said before around be specific about the number that you're asking for and be specific about the criteria to make it easier for them to know who in their network, right? Short circuit that mental math that they have to do and make it easy. All right. Who else do you know that needs that? All right. You've benefited in all these ways and we've solved this problem for you. Who else do you know that has this particular problem? All right. Capture testimonials. Use them everywhere, right? So make all of this early momentum into more momentum. So very frequently, once we get a sale, we only worry about like servicing that customer's needs. And we assume that the only value that customer has to us is the money that they pay us for continuing to service those needs. Absolutely untrue. At the early stage, the value each new client represents might be far greater than the cash they ever pay you in terms of their ability to help you achieve escape velocity and get into that next 10K and beyond.
We have a system for that, Ryan, right here in Startups.com, where as soon as we have a magic moment, something good, we automatically ask for a testimonial, and it's baked into our system. So that's what you're talking about. Like, start turning that into a flywheel. Systems create flywheels, everyone. That's so important. Next, now we're going to expand. You're saying test one new acquisition channel.
One. Okay. Now we know who our buyers are. Now let's go find more of them. All right. Once we've got 10, we should be able to draw some lines in the sand around kind of what defines who they are and who they aren't. We can contrast that against the 10 that bought, and in my example, I think the 20 who didn't, right? We said we talked to 30 people, we sold to 10. So you now have some ability to fingerprint these folks and then to try to duplicate that, right? So now we sort of know who they are. We want to go find more of them. So we pick one new channel, right? What channel do we pick? The one where we're most likely to find these folks, not the one that we're comfortable with, not the one that we've used in the past, not the one that our competitors are using. All right, the one that is where these people are hanging out. How could we possibly know where they're hanging out? We ask them, right? We got 10 of them. We just ask them, like, where are you going for your information? Where are you going? And then think about things. Like we've talked about this before, but like the channel we pick, they can't just be there. They have to be there and they have to be in the right frame of mind to do whatever it is that we need to do in that channel, right? So if we want them to book a call with us, it probably, late night Facebook ads are not the thing, right? If we want them to join a community, LinkedIn might be a great place for that. We just build a group there and we have them opt in, right? So we got to think about what that next action is and where we want to find them, but make sure that we're not picking a platform where they're emotionally, psychologically, or somehow otherwise less likely to do what we need.
Looking for those underestimated or underrepresented gaps. Here's a pro tip that I do. Once I have my best customers, put them all together, and then I just creep their social media. I literally spy on them and I find out their behaviors. And if I find out they all like a particular movie, or they happen to all go to a conference, or they all follow or quote the same person, because you can get all that these days, right? Like it's amazing the intelligence that you can source. And I look for these really kind of blue ocean or things that my competitors are not looking at, some commonality. And if I can find that, man, that's gold. I can mine that all day long.
Yeah. If you are super differentiated and one of your differentiation points like is your competitor and being able to say, we are different than so-and-so in a way that like most of your customer base has told you they want them to be different, goes back to, the mom test, doing that customer interview research and understanding why the incumbent solutions don't solve the problem completely. Then positioning yourself on the same channel as your competition might make a lot of sense. If you're not fully differentiated, if it sort of like comes down to preference, or maybe you're not well enough known, you probably don't want to be hanging out next to your biggest competitors, right? You got to find other ways to reach them. Now, you may not be able to. You may say, like, look, there's fairly narrow channels. Our competitors are across all of them. I do want you to remember something. I tell founders this a lot. At the early stages, we generally are not competing with another company or another product or another service. we're competing with our own ability to execute and provide value and to describe that value to people. So take a little bit of solace in that. And again, this is why we started with that internal network of people who know us. Immediate additional credibility boost, unless you've eroded your credibility in your network, in which case, like, let's talk separately. That's a huge issue. But yeah, we just want to pick one little channel, start small, validate that channel before scaling, because that's the other thing that I'll see people do. It's they're like, okay, now we got to jump. Now we've got a channel. Now let's pour a ton of cash into this. The reality is these things are typically not fully sequential, right? Like, you've sold 10 people using your personal network. Now we are going to Flywheel using the paying customers you already had. We're going to be looking for referrals. We're going to be capturing testimonials. We're going to be building on that. We're still going to be selling within our own network, right? So this isn't okay, now stop doing that and start doing this, because the likelihood that one new acquisition channel takes off right from the get-go is relatively low. So we want to make sure that these things are running in parallel to some degree, overlapping for at least a while, not running in sequence. Because I think when you start to run in sequence, you set yourself up for this very herky-jerky start-stop where growth all of a sudden stalls out, revenue goes to zero, and then we figure out the channel. Like, keep it flowing, keep it going.
The last point, refine your offer and pricing.
Yep.
So you got your channel. Now we continue to refine. That's the name of the game.
Yeah, this is part of a more macro theme around just making it easier for your customers to say yes. All right. So part of that is just being able to find you. Right? That's why we go with the additional channel. Part of that is getting those referrals, because it's easier to say yes if somebody I know that I trust has already done this. Capturing those testimonials. If I don't know the person, but I can see lots of people saying, "Hey, this works. I want to do that too." All right, going back to what's already worked so that we know what those objections are, so that we can handle them before they ask them, so that we can reframe the problem contextually so that it's very specific to them. All of what we're doing at this stage is trying to make it easier for people to say yes. All right, so by refining the offer and the pricing based on that feedback, all right, is our pricing clear? Do people understand it? Do they like it? All right? Do they push back against parts of it? Like me and HubSpot literally every month, where I'm like beating them up because, well, why are you charging me this way for this when how I consume it is actually that, right? Go talk to people about this stuff because this can not only impact your ability to sell, it can impact your ability to drive LTV, right? If somebody's like, well, we'll try it. I don't like that they're charging me on a per contact basis, but let's see if there's ROI. If I get 3 or 4 months in and I'm like, but the number of contacts we have doesn't line up with the amount of activity that we've got, I'm going to have to make a switch. So we want to make sure that's there. Think about things like money back guarantees. Now that we understand what our cost inputs for servicing these clients are and the amount of time and money it takes us to get them, we can do some things like money back guarantees or tying that to milestones, something else that makes it easier for them to say yes, lowers that emotional, analytical, financial barrier to saying yes. Maybe you find that payment plans work, but at this stage, we want to get to the understand, we now know the pattern of communication that gets people to yes. So now we're looking at how do we optimize that last mile? What are all those little things that happen as they go from that conversation with us to needing to plunk down the Amex, write the check, wire the money, whatever it is? How can we optimize that piece of it?
All good stuff. Ryan, I'm going to leave you and everybody else on a cliffhanger. We've run out of time. Next session, we're going to talk about bringing this all together and then scaling it for your 10X, which founders have to do. This has been amazing. Everybody, get your questions ready. Share this with a founder. Load it up. Meet us here next time, same place, and we'll take care of things. Ryan, always a pleasure. See you next time.
Bye, guys.